Over the years of playing goal, I spent tons of money on like fancy pads. But when it comes to skates, I kind of just like get whatever's on sale and just kind of tough it out and just make it work with my feet. Nowadays, skates have pretty much become the most like picky part of my equipment. I'm really finicky with how my boot sits and how my laces are done. So in this video, I'm going to talk about hollows, profiles, laces, what's in my skate. Hopefully that will give you some ideas of what you can do with your skates if you're having a few issues with them. So this is what I was wearing before. So this is like kind of like an old school boot with a cowling on it. This is the 44K CCM Ribcore. It's got like a pretty sweet pump on here, like a basketball shoe. Pretty rad. So in August of 2023, I ended up getting this new skate, the Bauer Elite. So this is a cowlingless skate, which was pretty much an impulse buy. So when I bought my new pads, I was like, hey, why not get some skates with that as well too? So really good upsell from the sales guy. So if you're a goalie that still uses this kind of like OG kind of skate like this, and you're thinking about switching to one of the new fancy skates, like this one of the things that I didn't know when I got this was the size of the steel. So this is the old one over here. So see how thick that is compared to the new one, which is like this one over here, that's pretty thin. So the difference between this is 1 millimeter. So not much difference at all. So when I stepped on the ice with these ones, I was in for a shock. So just a word of advice, if you're going from an old skate with a 4 millimeter steel like this to a 3 millimeter steel like this, and if you try the exact same profile and hollow between these two, they're gonna feel completely different. Unfortunately, I learned that the hard way. And I'm gonna tell you my long-winded story of kind of how I've got to a place where I'm actually happy with how this is actually feeling now. So before I actually start talking about the skates themselves, let's talk about profiles. So the profiles essentially is the shape of the bottom of the blade here. So where the steel is in contact with the ice. So a custom profile allows you to basically shape this the way that you want. So a stock profile is essentially going to be completely flat, so not really giving you much of a curve or profile shape to them. When you get a custom profile, you're allowed to kind of like shave off and shape that blade. That we can get more mobility and agility, or forward lean or back lean, whatever is your preference. So my old skates, I use a profile called Goalie Sam, which is essentially what I'm showing here. You notice that when I push my toe down, because of the profile, it allows me to lean forward. So if you had a flatter or straighter profile, you're not going to get much of this lean, if any at all. And when it comes to hollow, my old skates were using a 3/4 hollow, which is quite shallow, but I really like the glide for shuffles. So if you're not familiar with hollows, basically the shallower the hollow, the more glide, whereas the deeper the hollow, the more bite you'll have. It's really a balance between the two, and it really depends on what your play style is and your preference, of course. So my old skates, I had a Goalie Sam profile, so a really aggressive forward lean cut on my steel, and also had a 3/4 or a very shallow hollow. And I was really comfortable with that using this particular skate. When I did the exact same setup on these new guys here on the 3 millimeter blades, so again Goalie Sam and a 3/4 hollow, I was pretty much rocking and falling over forward, falling over backwards, and I was just slipping out like no tomorrow. There was just way too much glide. So, you know, again, I gave it some time to kind of adjust to the new skate. Obviously there's no cowling, different thickness of the steel. I kept going back to the skate sharpening guy. I'm like, hey, what's going on with me? I can't skate anymore. Can we change the hollow? So we actually went to a 1/2 inch hollow, which felt a lot better, so a little bit more bite, but I was still lacking a lot of that stability. So I kind of told him what my dilemma was. I'm like, hey, these are pretty new skates. I don't know what's going on. Like, I really don't feel balanced on them at all. So he asked, how old were your old skates? And what type of thickness was the steel? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. But my old skates were about 6-7 years old. So he's like, oh, that's a 4 millimeter blade on there. And this is a 3 millimeter blade. So that's pretty much where it kind of dawned on the fact that, wow, that 1 millimeter makes a big difference in terms of how your steel is going to be set up. So what he suggested, if I wanted more stability, as opposed to modifying my hollow, I could always try a new profile. The Goalie Sam profile is meant for really quick mobility and agility moves, so a little bit less balance, but quicker movements. So he suggested doing something called a Goalie Win, which is a more of a flatter profile on there to allow me to have more stability. So a few hours later, came out of the shop with a new profile and the same hollow, so 1/2 inch hollow, and I was super excited to try this on the ice. As soon as I got on the ice, I was like, hey, this is awesome. It felt really good. I didn't kind of teeter over forward or fall over backwards anymore. That was great. I actually felt like I was gliding really nice. However, I couldn't shuffle anymore. So I was pretty much glued to the ice as I tried to do my shuffles. Now the thing is, when you change your profile, that's also going to affect how your hollow is going to feel too. So basically there, I'm in warm-ups before the game. I'm stuck, I can't shuffle at all. I'm pretty much scraping the bottom of my edge on the inner boards, trying to dull it as much as I can. And after a while, I settled on a 5/8 hollow, and that kind of felt a little bit better. So overall, I was happy with a goalie win profile with a 5/8 hollow, and I played a couple months in that. So even though it felt pretty good, I kind of felt like I was missing a lot of the mobility that Goalie Sam was giving me. So I kind of just started looking at different steel types and what other options are there. So depending on the sharpener person that you're going to, they might only have 2 profiles available. Different shops have different profiles. So I really wanted to just like try one more different thing out for my skates. And unfortunately, the skate shop that I was going to only had 2 profiles for me, so Sam and Win. So after going on the YouTubes and watching Maria Mountain's channel, I decided to go with Titan blades and ordered a new set of steel with that as well too. So this is the Bauer Pulse TI, and I had asked them to do an atomic K-cut profile on them, which is unique to Titan, and that's something that Maria Mountain also suggested as well. I chose that because I'm quite a toe pusher in my butterfly push, and that's essentially what they suggested for me to try as well too. So when I got these back, I was again super pumped to try them out, put them on my skates, jumped on the ice, and again, it felt awesome. Like, it felt really good. Obviously, a fresh sharpen, a fresh new coated blade like this, it felt like skating on butter. It was really, really smooth and really nice. I was using an atomic K-cut with a 3/4 hollow on this. So shuffles were like super smooth, not too much bite, unfortunately, because it's a really shallow hollow. It felt pretty good, and I'm a little bit hesitant to say that because I did end up changing my hollow to something a little bit deeper. I think I went to like a 5/8, and I kind of stuck with that for a couple months. And I felt that kind of gave me just a bit more bite in my butterfly pushes and my push-offs and such. I went through 3 different profiles, basically, a bunch of different sharpens in between as well to try different hollows. This stuff is not cheap. Like, changing your profiles is probably one of the more expensive things you can do with your steel. This is the setup that I used during our Dire Wolves playoffs, and also the coaching sessions that I did with Provision goaltending. And so what's interesting during one of those sessions, and I also mentioned that in the 3rd video, I believe, that the coach suggested that I try a deeper hollow, so going up to a 1/2 inch, maybe even deeper than that. So me being the person that I am, I decided to kind of like scrap all this like custom profile stuff, particularly from this blade. And if you're still watching right now, I definitely applaud you, but I hate to say it, I kind of went full circle and I went back to Goalie Sam.
Goalie Sam.
There's a reason why it's such a popular profile, because it kind of gives you that really good agility and forward lean for you to kind of like pivot around and move into your butterfly pushes and T-pushes and such. But I ended up sending this one back to Titan, got a standard Goalie Sam on it. So these are now profiled, both identical Goalie Sam, but this time I'm using a 7/16 hollow, so a lot deeper than what I've originally used. So you see that I started with a 3/4 hollow, which is very, very shallow, and then now I'm going to almost like the deepest you can get, which is a 7/16. And when I changed the profiles to Goalie Sam and changed the hollow, I was a little bit worried that I was going to have the same problems that I did at the very beginning, where I was kind of like teetering over and falling over. But I think because I played so much during the winter time, I probably built up a lot of like ankle strength and hopefully some leg muscles at the same time. When I started to use the new profile and hollow, it felt completely natural. It felt great. I had no problems with that. So that's pretty much what I'm rocking now on these skates. That's my long-winded journey on profiles and hollows. It took a lot of experimentation and just like trying different things out. But that's kind of the cool part about being a goalie, is just tweaking your gear until you find what's good for you. So I know you're probably gonna ask, well, what type of hollow and profile should I use? What I've learned is really based on your experience level and what you prefer. So some people like a lot of glide and not much bite, whereas other people use as deep of a hollow as they can to get more bite in their pushes. So usually the suggestion is to start at 1/2 inch hollow and kind of work your way either deeper, more bite, or shallow, and lesser bite. But it's really up for you to try and experiment and see what works for you. So that's basically my long-winded story of how I got to something that I'm comfortable with when it comes to profile and hollow. There's a couple other things that I do inside my skate, which I'm going to show you right now. Alright, so let's check out what's inside the boot here. So one of the first things that I put into my skate is this little thing here. So I think this is called something called like a power foot. So really simple thing, it's a little small piece of foam. And what this is going to do, it's going to sit kind of on the roof of your toe box like this. And what that's going to do for you is it's going to kind of keep your toes like flat on your skate. That way you're always on the balls of your feet. So when you're pushing and you're getting all your power, it's making sure that your toes are always pushing down. That way you get the most power from your foot. And I got one of these things because I noticed that when I shuffle, I noticed that my toes will actually kind of like curl in as I'm shuffling, because there's still a little bit of space between my toe and the top of my toe box here. So just adding this in there really keeps my toes in place, and so when I push, I know that I'm actually using all the power from my feet as possible. And having this thing in, I actually did notice a big difference when it comes to my butterfly pushes, as opposed to not having it in there, because your butterfly push is going to be coming a lot from your toes. So having this thing is really, really useful. It's really cheap to kind of put one of these in there. And the other thing that I have in my skate is an insole. I'm sure you've all heard of these things. Good old super feet. So this is just basically giving you some arch support. So I don't have flat feet, but you know, some people do. So having this hard plastic here can help you maintain that arch. I don't really see much of a benefit having this in there for me. I did do like a comparison playing a game with and without these. I didn't notice too much difference. The only difference I noticed when I first put these on was because of this arch support. I did feel a little bit higher in my skates, and I also felt a little bit less sore in my feet. But when it came to like performance on the ice, I don't think it was really anything noticeable. The last little bit that I'll talk about is the laces. So these are basically wax laces. I do feel like they kind of keep their tightness a bit better when they're wax as opposed to the stock laces that come on skates. So this is the other thing that I've been kind of playing around with, is how I lace at the top of the ankle here. So doing something like this where it's a bit looser allows you to have more ankle flexion. That way you can kind of get deeper into your knee bend, which has helped me for my butterfly pushes and just kind of like getting into a nice crouch stance without much restriction in the ankle area. You can kind of notice that I'm not using that third eyelet here, and I'm actually lacing it from the second one over here. So thanks for listening to my rant about my skates. It's one of those things that I think fiddling with my skates, I probably spent way too much time on that. If I actually spent that time learning how to skate, I probably wouldn't have to do all those things to it. But you know, lesson learned. You know, it's always fun to kind of tweak equipment around. But hopefully I'm going to be set on what my setup here is today. So I hope that journey with my skates gives you a few ideas of what you could do with yours. Learn from my mistakes that I did with my skates. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.